ironically, it deals with what we talked about earlier before we went on the air. It's the first question I had in my community section from Ruben K. He said, how do you stand your ground and resist mandatory forced vaccinations if and when it comes into effect, assuming the research proves their toxicity and harm?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question, and it's something I have certainly been putting a lot of effort into thinking about. And what I feel is the best strategy is that I learned about this gentleman named Cal Washington, and he is an individual who has, through his own experience and through his own learning, has studied how the law is practiced and enforced in our country. And he even actually had to spend some time behind bars to figure this out. And his only crime was not having insurance for his car. So he's a very moral person. He would definitely not cause harm to any other individual. But through this experience, he has gained a level of knowledge that is pretty incredible. And he joined up with other people in this area, and they formed this group called In Power. That I would definitely, refer your audience to check out. And what they did is they came up with this legal strategy, which is it's called a notice of liability. And it's based on the fact that anything that we are compelled to do in our society, such as get a driver's license, get automobile insurance, pay taxes, have mandatory vaccines, all of these things are in the form of a contract. And we actually agree to these things, even though it seems like they're required even without our agreement. We actually did give our agreement, we just didn't state it outright. And this is kind of a little bit of a trick that could be used to get us to go along with things when we don't realize that we can actually withdraw our consent at any time. So what this strategy involves is it looks at the required vaccines as a contract. And what we say is that we will accept that contract and allow these vaccines to be given to us on certain conditions. And the condition is that you can show us conclusive evidence, like 99.9999% conclusive evidence, that vaccines are effective at preventing illness and are safe, that we will not get any kind of injury whatsoever from the vaccines except for 1 in 10 million people. And that's the 99.9999. And we say that if you're unable to demonstrate clear evidence that these vaccines are safe and effective to those requirements that we specify in the notice, and you still force us to accept the mandatory or the vaccine, that you will be personally liable for a sum of $10 million. So we would send this notice to the government officials who have taken an oath under the Constitution, promising to protect and defend the Constitution, which is our rights to freedom of choice, and that we can with consent or withdraw consent to these. And since they would be violating that, then they would be held personally liable for this money. And if, let's say that 100 people sent this notice to the health department official in their county, well, then they would be liable for over $1 billion. So this strategy is not just theoretical, it's actually been used in the real world in 3 or 4 different cities. And it was not used for vaccines, it was used for smart meters, which is a special kind of electric meter that, in various areas they try to put on everyone's home, and it causes some people to get quite ill because of the electromagnetic radiation. So this is also related to 5G. And so there were people who didn't want this installed on their house, and the utility companies were saying that they had to, or if they didn't, they had to pay a fine, which would render them unable to afford electricity. And so they used this strategy, and no one that used this strategy was forced to put a smart meter on. And several times this happened, that within a very short time of the government official in charge of this receiving this notice, that they resigned from office. And there was even a CEO of a utility company who was sent this notice who resigned from office. So it was extremely effective. Basically, what happened is the politicians saw that if they didn't step down, they were going to owe millions and millions of dollars. And it's not just that they have a bill that they owe this money. This document actually allows you to take a commercial lien on the person. So you could potentially garnish their wages, you could seize their property and take ownership of it if they don't pay the liability claim. So the politicians realized that. I could imagine them taking the document, being confused about what it is, going down to the county attorney and saying, would you take a look at this and tell me what it means? And then a couple of hours later, the attorney comes in and says, boy, you're in deep trouble. If you don't give these people a pass, they're going to make you bankrupt.
Well, will that also work in reality with somebody who already took the smart meter and then comes into the knowledge of, hey, I could have taken this road?
Yes, so it's never too late to amend the terms of the contract. So you can do this, but with vaccines, once you get a vaccine, there is no going back.
Right.
So it's something that so Cal and his group are feverishly just the document is almost complete. There's just a couple of small revisions that need to be made, and then it'll be ready to be rolled out. So Cal and I are actually going to both appear together on Richie from Boston's YouTube channel tomorrow evening at 5:30 Eastern, and we're going to lay out this strategy in more detail than I'm describing it now. And he's really the main legal expert. I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems with vaccines and how the document addresses those. Okay. But I'm really excited, and I have a lot of hope that this remedy is going to be very effective, and it's going to be the most effective if a lot of people do it together. Right. So like I'm involved with a group in my community of people who are concerned about vaccines, and they are eagerly awaiting this information. And I think right after they hear about how it works, they're all going to be ready to get on board, and we're all going to do this together.
That's awesome. And we talked about this before we went on air too, is that, truth is treason in the empire of lies. It truly, truly is. There are people who want the deception. They want the cloak of just lies and evil, and just they want to get away from truth, and they want to do it to make money. They want it to accumulate power or whatever. And it's always the people who suffer. But if we lift off the lid of deception and find out exactly what's going on and arm ourselves with knowledge, it can be a completely different outcome. But like I said to you earlier, and like I always tell my audience, if we don't stick together, if we don't hang together, we will hang separately. So with some closing thoughts, what do you want to leave with the audience about COVID-19, about the fact that people are in fear for their lives, and just talk to that average person on the streets who really buys into what mainstream media is telling them? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say that I agree with you 100%. It's time to turn off the TV. And if you want to learn about what's going on, I encourage you to find your own information and figure this out for yourself. Just get out a computer and think, what is it important to know about? And search for that and find the information. Because just seeing that, for example, in an average year in the world, there are between 300,000 and 700,000 deaths from the flu, an average flu. Well, there's nowhere near that number of deaths from COVID-19, not even close. And in an average year, we have that many deaths, and we don't hide in our homes. We don't stay away from other people. We are not afraid of other people, and we go about our lives. And so you have to then ask yourself, why are we subjected to these extreme measures now when there's no objective evidence of a real risk? And if you can get to that point and ask that question and look for the answer, then you're on the path to freedom. Because once you have the truth, then you are truly free to make your own decisions about how you're going to deal with this this issue and how you want our lives to be after this is all over. Because I really liked the way things were. They certainly weren't perfect, and there was a lot of tyranny at some level, but nothing like this Orwellian outlook that seems to be on the horizon.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so, and I'm going to help you guys out. What I'm going to do is the links to everything that I can think of